go, because that's sort of the nature of the debate and what I want to change. First of all, what happened last year is before I became chairman of the Finance Committee, and I'm guest chairman for another couple of days, and then Senator Hatch will be chair, and I'll be the ranking minority member. Is that me, Danny?
I think it may be Romanesque code here.
Let's try this. Okay. What happened last year before I became chairman of the committee, Max Baucus, then the chairman, and Dave Camp, then the chairman in the House of the Ways and Means Committee, they introduced a proposal, and Orrin Hatch went on it. I was actually chairman of the Trade Subcommittee then. I wasn't asked to even go on it. I guess the reason I wasn't asked because they knew I wasn't comfortable with it. So the three of them put it in. And then when Max Baucus went off to China, the discussion was what would happen next. And when I was asked, I said, look, my view of that proposal, which was really the Max Baucus and Dave Camp proposal for what's called fast track and TPA and really the procedures for a trade agreement, I think reflected trade law that hadn't kept up with the times. I mean, trade law still is kind of in a time warp, going back to the 1990s, NAFTA, and some of those agreements. And back then we didn't even have iPhones, and nobody was texting and the like, so it really hadn't kept up with the times. And I said that. So a lot of people who come to the meetings say, Ron, you said you weren't for what they were talking about last year. Have you changed your mind? And the answer to that is no, I have not. So we start kind of with that. That always kind of gets intertwined with an actual agreement, which would be the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a discussion of trade with a whole host of Asian countries, and there are a whole bunch of others coming after it. A discussion of something called TTIP, which would involve Europe and a whole host of other countries. So a lot of people are coming up to me and saying, Ron, what's your position on TPP? And I say it reminds me a little bit of the Star Wars movie that's supposed to come out in 2015 sometime in the summer because it doesn't exist now. So Star Wars doesn't exist and TPP doesn't exist. So there are negotiations about it. We talk about what are the various issues being negotiated, but there is no TPP agreement right now. What Senator Hatch and the Republicans have indicated they're interested in doing is moving ahead with the procedures for trade, which is what we call TPA and fast track and the like. And I have said what's needed is a policy that I call trade done right, because trade done right is a real opportunity for our state, where 1 out of 5 jobs depends on international trade. The trade jobs often pay better than do the non-trade jobs because they're export related and reflect a high level of productivity. So trade done right is a real opportunity for our state. So the question is, what is trade done right? First of all, we have a lot more focus on enforcing the trade laws on the books. And you may have seen, particularly in Washington County, is there a reason why the lights are going on?
That was a hint, your time was up? I don't know.
I knew that the trade debate would generate passion. Trade done right is, to me, sort of the next part of the discussion, because Senator Hatch and Chairman Ryan and others are clearly not going to wait for TPP to be fully unveiled. They're going to start in with the procedures on it. I think there needs to be a focus on enforcement, which is why I fought so hard for Solar World, an important Washington County employer. And I think to a great extent, what happens with solar will say a lot about how renewable energy fares in this global marketplace. Because the Chinese were cheating on Solar World, number one. They were dumping. And then, if that wasn't bad enough, their army hacked into Solar World's computers in order to find out how they were trying to defend themselves on a trade issue. So enforcement is important. My view is that transparency is important. Folks, the days are over where Oregon and the American people are going to be kept in the dark about what's in a trade agreement. I'm just telling you, we've got this new thing called the internet. It's really a cool thing. You can find out what's going on. There is no reason for keeping people in the dark about trade. So transparency, enforcement, governance issues, human rights kinds of questions, and there are a whole host of issues that probably are going to be more for the agreement part of the discussion, TPP and TTIP and the like currency, that really weren't particularly relevant back in the 1990s when everybody was talking about NAFTA. The currency is hugely important now. And then, of course, there's environment and labor questions as well. So what I've done is made it clear that I am going to work with all of my colleagues on the Finance Committee, which is where it starts, Democrats and Republicans, for an approach that I call trade done right. Because if we do, for Oregon, which of course has a geographical advantage to the Pacific Rim, folks, we got a chance in our state to grow things here, things like wine, make things here, like our tech, industries, add value to them here, and then ship them somewhere. And that's a pretty good deal for the possibility of more high-skill, high-wage jobs at a time when wages are one of the biggest concerns that we all know that the middle class has. So that may be a longer answer than you wanted, but that's my take of where it is.